What's important to remember, though, when you inherit a large Roth IRA, typically you're going to wait closer to the end of the 10 years.
Exactly.
Because if you inherit, let's say you inherit a $100,000 Roth IRA, if you took all of that out on day one, yes, it's tax-free and you have $100,000, but you can't go back and put that because of the contribution limits into another Roth IRA immediately.
If you inherit an IRA from your spouse, you get special treatment. You can move that money directly into your IRA, even if you have to create a new one, and it's treated as if you were the one who contributed in the first place. So spouses get a special treatment. It's everybody else, like your kids, for example.
Eric Douglas, Chris Vaughn, we're back with another edition of the Retirement Planning Happy Hour. So we have a pretty good treat today. This is one a little nostalgic for me.
Yes, it is.
Going back to Eagle Rare. Eagle Rare is one of my favorite bourbons, but this is a very special version of Eagle Rare, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But the topic for today is going to be all about inheritances. So a sad, unfortunate reality of what we do.
Sure.
Typically the people we deal with most, a lot of our clients, typically have the most amount of money are typically going to be older folks.
Right,
and,
sure.
Death is unfortunately a fact of life, and on occasion we do have clients that pass away. Death and taxes, two things you can't avoid,
Can't
right?
get away from them, right?
So we're going to spend some time chatting about inheritances and navigating through some of the challenges of dealing with inheritances.
We're going to struggle with that.
I think I said that right.
I see it coming.
But we're going to go through some of the challenges that we face with those, not strictly just from a financial standpoint, but also probably from an emotional standpoint as well. So we'll take that, and I'll let you talk about the bourbon that we're going to be tasting today, because I know this is going to be delicious.
Yeah, okay. So we're going to start with the bourbon. This one is special. It's new. So to your point, Eric, Eagle Rare brings back memories. Anybody who's been a bourbon drinker for a while will tell you that they like Eagle Rare. So when you say Eagle Rare, what most people think of is the 10-year product. That's one of the things that makes it great, is it's always at least 10 years old, right? I've heard people say it's a poor man's Blanton's. I've heard people say it's a poor man's Pappy. Those are both impossible because it's a different mash bill. This is Buffalo Trace's Mash Bill 1, which is their lower rye. Blanton's is Mash Bill 2. That's the higher rye. And then, of course, Pappy is the wheated mash bill. So they're different. But I've never met anybody who doesn't like Eagle Rare. And when the bourbon industry really exploded a few years back, this one was one of the ones that became so hard to get. I mean, I remember when Eagle Rare was, $28, $29 a bottle?
So when I say Eagle Rare, when I get nostalgic about Eagle Rare, this is why. So when I was a broke college kid, not even a college kid, when I was out of college and I was broke and living on my own and I was just had no money, right?
Yeah.
I found a delicious bourbon for about $23, $24.
Wow, okay.
That I was like, I'm going to try this out. And I brought home just my first bottle of Eagle Rare. And I said, this is unbelievable. I cannot believe this is less than $25. This is an amazing bourbon for $25. It became my go-to. I always had Eagle Rare.
And you were not unique in that either.
I always had Eagle Rare. And unfortunately, when kind of the bourbon craze just went into overdrive a few years after that, it became increasingly harder to find. And to the point now where whenever I see one, I try to grab one because you just don't ever find them on the shelves.
And it's getting better, but you're right. Eagle Rare was one of the bourbons that just went bananas. Everybody had to have it, and it started selling on the secondary market for over $100, $150, and it's like, it's really good, but it's not $150 good, right? Okay, so then in order to capitalize on that, Buffalo Trace released some other versions. There's a 17-year, which I can tell you is out of this world, that is part of their antique collection. There is one called Double Eagle Rare, which is a 20-year when it comes in a crystal decanter. I've seen that one on the shelf for $5,000. There is a 25-year version. I have never seen it anywhere. It's not just a unicorn, it's mythical, right? But they've just recently come out with, and we talked about how as the bourbon craze is slowing down, this product is all still there. They've been making it. So we were going to see more availability to those of us who are just bourbon fans. And we were going to see some new things. And I think this is one of the first of the new things. Now they've got all this product. They got to do something different. So they come out with a 12-year. 12-year theoretically is that magical point where you get the most complexity. I have not tasted this yet. I'm sitting here going, okay, I got to stop talking and turn this over to you so that I can taste this. But that's what this one is. It is retail. Are you ready? $49.95.
Yeah, like you're going to find that anywhere.
I paid $49.95 for this, plus 6% Kentucky
No,
income tax.
you got to hook up.
But it came from the distillery. That's what they were selling, and a friend was there.
Oh, so you got this at?
I got this from the distillery. I didn't personally. My friend was there and called me and said, "Hey, they've got this out today. Do you want one?" Yes, right. I mean, do you have to ask? So they brought it to me the other day, and I've been waiting to open it for today. But it is already selling on the secondary market. I looked it up before we got on the air today. I found it for $450. It's like
Man.
no, that's just dumb, right? I mean, talk about bad with money.
Yeah.
That would be it. If I had $1 billion, I would not spend $450 on a bottle of Eagle Rare. I don't care how good it is, right?
That's someone that has a collection somewhere that just has a hole they need to plug.
Just can't wait until it becomes more available, because I think this one is going to get more available. It's not going to be something that you can find in any liquor store, but it is going to be something that you will see with regularity, and eventually you're going to start seeing it closer and closer to that retail price point. So with that, I'll turn it back over and we'll start talking about inheritance.
Yeah. So a couple different ways we can go with this, but I think when it comes to inheritances, one thing I see the most when you have clients that are receiving money from their parents, usually, right? Sometimes a sibling, something like that. But there tends to be some confusion around what they are receiving in the first place. And so this is where it goes back to communication prior to someone passing away is highly, highly important, because there are a number of considerations that need to be taken into account regarding, number one, taxes, because the different types of accounts that we've talked ad nauseum about this, it's not so much about the investments that you have, it's about the accounts that you hold that's going to dictate the way that those investments are taxed, depending upon the type of account that they are being held in. So the types of accounts that your kids inherit are going to really determine what their actual inheritance is net after taxes. So if your concern is leaving money to your kids, the way to do that is typically going to be in the most tax efficient way possible. But most kids, when we have clients that maybe have older parents, you'd be amazed. They might have some clue as far as how much money their parents might have, but they have no idea how it's divvied up. They don't know the types of accounts that it's in. They don't know how they're going to be receiving their inheritances. And this becomes a huge issue, because when you think about typically the age that most people pass away, late 70s, early 80s, right? Well, if you have kids when you're, 20, 25, 30 years old, your kids are probably in their prime earning years prior to retirement. They're probably making more money than they've ever made before. So if you dump a big inheritance, even if it's not a big inheritance, even if just a decent sized inheritance in their lap, there's going to be some serious tax consequences that they're going to have to figure out as far as how best to receive or how best to take distributions from the money that they are inheriting from their parents, let's say. So all these different considerations you're having to take into account, usually at a time when they don't want to be thinking about this stuff, right? Nobody wants to talk about this. It's just like, oh yeah, no one wants to feel bad talking about money. It's just kind of like I feel kind of creepy talking to my parents about their money before they're gone and what I'm going to do with it when they're gone.
Get that out of your system.
And so it just becomes kind of this creepy thing in their head, and it just becomes something that they don't, like an icky topic they don't want to talk about. But the reality is the more, and a lot of this, quite frankly, should be on the parents as well. But this should be a topic that is discussed pretty openly.
I would agree. There's that old stigma that when the family gets together, you don't talk about money or religion or politics, but you really should, right? Especially on the money thing, when there's an inheritance involved. You and I have both worked with many, many people who they're going to be leaving money behind to their kids. And to your point, they are probably going to be doing it when their kids are at their highest income earning ages. And they don't realize that it's actually creating a tax situation, right? One that they weren't prepared for. Or on the other end, Mom and dad don't tell you what you're going to inherit because they don't talk about money, right? Well, okay, my kids don't know what my financial situation looks like, but there will come a point in time where I'm going to need to share that.
But they're also like in high school.
Yeah, exactly. so it's a little bit different now. You know, in the case of 50-something-year-old adults who are talking to mom and dad about what the inheritance is going to look like, it's going to matter. And we brought this subject up today because you and I have both had a couple of things come up with clients in the last couple of weeks. You know, we didn't record last week. We've had a couple of things come up that are, this is a big deal. And the tax implications on one in particular that I'm dealing with right now are in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes that they wouldn't have needed to pay if they'd have done it right. And we're trying to get that fixed now. So, you know, you were talking about the accounts. The first thing that I would want to address is what we call an inherited IRA. So
most common.
Prior to, I want to say it was 2017 when the law was passed. Please don't quote me on that. There was, if you inherited an IRA from somebody who was not your spouse. Now, we'll clarify. If you inherit an IRA from your spouse, you get special treatment. You can move that money directly into your IRA, even if you have to create a new one, and it's treated as if you were the one who contributed in the first place. So spouses get a special treatment. It's everybody else, like your kids, for example. So when somebody who is not a spouse inherits an IRA, the money has to be moved into what is called an inherited IRA account or a beneficiary IRA, interchangeable phrases. And once the money is in there, it can still be invested, right? In fact, you can invest it any way you would in a regular IRA. There is a lot of confusion in the law as to when you have to take it out. Some people say that there are RMDs in the law, but the law is so vague that that's not really enforceable. The rule is basically, regardless of your age, unless you're under 18, that's a little bit different, you have 10 years from the date of the original IRA holder's death. So whatever that date is, plus 10 years, you got to get the money out in that window, right? It really is that simple. You can do it in lump sums.
Take it up front.
All up front, all on the very last
end.
day. Yep. There's no rule there. Like I said, the law is a little vague on this. There's no rule there that says when you have to take it out. Most people are choosing to do a little bit of a systematic thing. But here's the issue. If you fail to take the money out within 10 years, any money that you fail to take out, not only do you have to pay taxes on it, you also have to pay a 50% penalty on it in addition to that. And I'm not sure, but I think the 50% penalty is taxable. So, I mean, this is a catastrophic mistake if you allow it to stay in there too long. So anytime somebody inherits an IRA, non-Roth IRA, that's different, usually that's the money that you want to start getting into first, right? And I had one this week where client came in, they had inherited money from mom and dad a couple of years ago. It's held at a different custodian, so I'm not managing, I can't see it.
There was an emotional attachment too to this
Absolutely.
other advisor because this other advisor was their parents' advisor.
Correct. So exactly, there was an emotional attachment.
So they were. Right? It wasn't really so much an emotional attachment to the advisor; it was an emotional attachment to their parents.
Correct.
Who had been using this advisor.
Correct.
For years before.
And we've said many times it's hard to do this without emotion, but you really should.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, what happened was I told them, okay, we need to stop taking money out of your IRAs and we need to start taking it out of mom and dad's IRAs because we have to get that out within 10 years. We don't have that rule with your personal stuff. So what we did, I told them what to do and they said, okay, great. So they go to the other advisor and they take the smaller of the two IRAs, the inherited ones, and they start using that first, exactly what I advised them to do. So that money's gone. Now they're supposed to start taking money from the other one. Well, that's what they thought was going on, but it wasn't what was happening. The other advisor was taking money out of the trust account, totally different tax situation. We'll talk about that one in a minute. But now they've got an increased risk because now they have to dwindle down a bigger account in a much smaller window of time. So rule of thumb, when you've got an inherited IRA, you need to start taking distributions out of it probably very soon. Systematic seems to be the best way to me, but I could argue that one. Just remember that the money that is in that IRA, if you invest it, it's still growing. So if you say, I'm going to take out a 10th every single year, well, you can take out a 10th, but you're going to have a big lump sum on the back end, and that could be a tax burden that year.
And you can take out a 10th, but if you get growth,
exactly
right, you can take out a 10th every year, but it's still not usually going to get you down to So you just got to be careful about how much you're taking out each year. You need to be smart about it, because in some years, maybe if you're 5 years away from working, maybe you design it so you're taking more of the income in the back 5 years, because in the first 5 years of this 10-year window, you're still going to be working.
Right.
So there's all kinds of different considerations that need to come into play, but all that to say that needs to be incorporated as a big part of your plan, because this will generate a huge tax liability for a lot of clients that inherit these pretty large IRAs.
Yeah, some of these are big.
We see them. We see this all the time.
Yeah, the ones that I'm referring to, these were in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So these are fairly sizable accounts. I want to add one thing to it. I said this does not apply in the case of Roth. Well, yes and no.
It's the same rule.
It's the same 10-year rule, but when you take it out, it's not a taxable issue. So with the one I was just telling you about, let's just say you take it out systematically, right? So roughly a 10th a year. Well, you have to report that as income that year. Now, you do not have to be 59 and a half years old to take it out, because it's inherited. You could be your age or mine. We're both under that. If we were to inherit one of these, we could do it now. There's no tax penalty, but we do have to report it as income. In the case of a Roth inherited, right, or an inherited Roth, or whatever you want to call it, that's not a taxable thing. You can take it out willy-nilly, right, and it does not affect you. But the 10-year rule is still there. So if you fail to get it out in 10 years, you still got to pay a 50% tax penalty on that.
What's important to remember, though, when you inherit a large Roth IRA, typically you're going to wait closer to the end of the 10 years.
Exactly.
Because if you inherit, let's say you inherit a $100,000 Roth IRA.
Okay.
If you took all of that out on day one, yes, it's tax-free and you have $100,000, but you can't go back and put that, because of the contribution limits, into another Roth IRA immediately. So I've got a couple of clients where they have inherited Roth IRAs, and the way that we are doing it is we are still systematically taking those distributions every year, but we're doing it under the guise of being able to take that inherited Roth IRA distribution tax-free, and then turn right back around and make a contribution to their own individual Roth accounts. Because once that money is out of a Roth, once it's in a Roth, you want to keep it in a Roth as long as you possibly can.
Correct. Exactly.
Tax-free growth, compounded tax-free growth is just...
It's a beautiful thing.
It's invaluable, right? And we don't want to interrupt that whenever possible. So we need to... So once again, it's not just as simple as, it's tax-free, we'll take it all out. You still need to be careful. There's still some serious tax consequences for kind of willy-nilly taking money out of an inherited Roth IRA.
So now that we've got that one straightened out, and I'd kind of lost my train of thought a little bit because I started drinking this bourbon again. Because, by the way, this is outstanding.
Money.
Yeah, this is good. So, just the issue with the inherited IRAs is you've got to be very systematic in the way that you address it, because it is a major tax implication. And once again, general rule: if you inherit an IRA and it's not from a spouse, you need a plan of attack to get that money out. It really is that simple, because if you don't, you're going to have such a major tax problem coming.
Yep.
I'll turn that one over to you if you want to go to the next one, or I'll pick up something else. I just want to sit here and drink some more of this. Oh my gosh.
Well, let's talk about this real quick, because this is delicious. I've had the 10 years, obviously fantastic. I love the 10-year.
Yeah.
This is so smooth.
Wow. And now, first of all, I forgot to mention, the 10-year Eagle Rare, the standard Eagle Rare, is 90 proof. They upped this to 95, so just a little bit. I don't know that I would notice a difference.
I don't.
But man, that is just butter. Right? And there's some really good flavors. This is typical of 12-year. I taste caramel. I taste oak. I taste toffee. I taste butter. Wow. There's a lot going on. And
see, I don't have my palate is not that refined.
We're going to work on that.
I just know that it's really good.
We're going to work on that. So far, really impressed. If you didn't notice, if you're listening to this, you wouldn't see it. But if you're watching, everything looks the same as the regular Eagle Rare, except here on the front it says 12 instead of 10. And then the foil at the top is kind of a bronze color, whereas the regular one is silver, right? And it's got a cute little 12 there on the top of it. So we're going to be delicate with that. I'd like to keep that part on there because that's just cool looking. Wow, that's good.
So when it comes back to inheritances.
Yeah, let's take it back.
One thing that I do want to address as well, because I have seen this a number of times, it's almost like when clients inherit an account, whatever the account is, it's almost like they want to keep that separate. Like it's not even really their money.
Right.
Because there's probably some emotional attachment to, mom or dad or whoever passed away. Said, oh, well, that's their money. And they don't even really consider it theirs. And so when you're talking to them about their plan, it's almost like they don't even want to incorporate that money as theirs into their plan. And for all the reasons that you just listed, especially as it relates to inherited IRAs, you have to incorporate those accounts into your individual plan because you have to account for all of those tax liabilities, for the tax consequences. So I understand the emotional aspect of, mom and dad are gone. This money was theirs, especially, and I see this a lot actually with stock holdings as well. And I just came across a client. It's going to be a new client we just met for the first time last week. She inherited a stock from, it was a bunch of GE stock. And her dad had worked there for years. He had built up all this GE stock. He passed away right before GE had split up all of its divisions.
Right.
So talk about a unique issue. This is going to be a very unique issue, a very unique quote unquote problem. And I'm doing air quotes right now because when I say problem, it's one of those really, really good problems to have, right? But when the GE stock was split up, when they split the company up into different parts, the respective stocks for some of the individual components of these new stocks skyrocketed over the last several years. So we have a great problem because she inherited this stock, and since her father passed away, some of the stock has really skyrocketed in value. However, that creates another issue because now we have a huge capital gains liability, and we need to figure out a way to diversify some of these holdings, but she didn't want to sell. In reality, now granted, once again, what's done is done, and in this case, it worked out very, very, very well. Okay, and which is very abnormal when you inherit specific stock holdings. In this case, it just worked out very well. But most of the time, when you inherit stock portfolios from your parents, they can be very, very limited in scope and not very well diversified. And usually there's some type of an emotional attachment, or it's usually someplace where maybe the parents worked for years and years and years. I still have a client that refuses to sell some of his old company stock that he worked at, and he's been retired for 30 years. And he still won't sell the stock of the company that he worked for. There's just that generation just has a different sense of loyalty than what you see in today's younger generations. So I think this is a good time to make sure that everybody that's listening understands the concept of step-up basis. Yep.
So let me go with that. So step-up basis is a concept that happens when somebody who owns something of value passes away and somebody else inherits that. So basis is a very simple calculation. It's how much you paid for something. So for example, if you go buy a share of stock ABC, right? And let's just say that stock is selling for $50. That's what you paid for it, okay? That means the basis is $50. Pretty straightforward. Okay. So, years go by, the stock does really well, and you sell it for $150. To determine the capital gains that you have to pay, you take the amount that you sold it for, so $150, and you subtract the basis, the difference in this case being $100. You got to pay capital gains on that $100. Maybe short term, maybe long term, depending on how long you held it, but that's the calculation. What's interesting here is when you pass away with that, and it could be real estate, it could be stock, it could be any number of things. The basis steps up to the value of whatever that holding is on the date of your death. So for example, let's go back to this same one. So you bought a stock for $50. It's now worth $150 and you pass away. Okay. And your spouse inherits it. Okay. The spouse now, the basis steps up from 50 to 150. So the stock, the basis on that stock is now 150. The spouse turns around and sells it immediately there's no tax on here because the spouse sold it immediately. Now that's an ideal scenario. That's not what's going to happen. Let's just say that the spouse sells the stock sometime later and it's worth 200, right? You paid 50 for it. It's now worth 200. Your spouse sells it, but the basis had stepped up to 150. So the survivor only has to pay capital gains on $50, right? Now that's a very simple, single stock holding. But when we get into some of these big accounts or real estate, which we had some stories happen recently about that, this can be a big, big issue. So great example here. Client inherited, mom and dad passed away. They inherited a trust account, right? They were the only beneficiaries. So all of these stock holdings, and it was a stock portfolio, and it was an aggressive stock portfolio, right? Because mom and dad had been very aggressive even in their retirement years. Something that we can
good for mom and dad.
Yeah, good for them. We can discuss whether they should have done that or not. But they inherit what is it's over $2 million worth of stocks, right? Okay. Existing, I'm pretty sure this was a broker is what it was. Existing broker didn't make any trades, right? The clients inherited, they didn't make any trades. They left it alone, maybe because of emotional things, as you said, because these were stocks that mom and dad had bought, right? Now, this was several years ago, and my attitude would have been you should have sold everything in that portfolio almost immediately, right? Because the basis had stepped up to their date of death, and now you're not going to have to pay very much in capital gains. Okay.
And now you can diversify.
Correct. And now we can diversify it any way we want to, and we're really minimizing the taxes on this. And we're talking about multiple $1 million. It's big, right? So I went back and looked at it, and I looked at the account. They haven't traded anything. Okay. Once again, this is multiple millions that are in this account. The difference in the value today and the value on dad's date of death, he was the last one to pass away. The difference is over $500,000.
More, I'm assuming, yeah.
Which means they now have to pay capital gains. And in this particular case, it's going to be at about 23% on $500,000, right? So you're talking what? $123,000, $124,000 in taxes that you wouldn't have had to pay virtually at all. It would have been a very small number if you'd have sold immediately.
So now you're feeling handcuffed by your own investments.
Right. Now you can't sell it because you're going to realize all these capital gains, right? So then here comes the vicious cycle. They don't need the money. It's not a big deal. They can leave it alone, right? And it can continue to appreciate for years because they're not that old. They have kids. Kids now inherit, but if the kids don't know what's going on, kids turn around and do the same thing. Right? And all of a sudden you've got this money it's effectively trapped because you're terrified of paying the taxes on it. Right?
Yep. Seen it many times.
Whereas if you just, as soon as possible after date of death, you sell all that stuff, you will have a tax burden, assuming that it appreciated in that window, but it'll be tiny compared to what it is after leaving it for years of that growth.
It's also worth noting if there was a loss from the date that let's say you inherited on March 1st, and at the end of March was a bad month in the stock market, and that account is now negative. Once you sell, you can actually claim that loss.
That's right.
Whatever, it's probably not a big loss, right? But you can actually claim that loss because once again, that cost basis stepped up to whatever the value was at the date of death.
Correct.
So if you sell any level below that, there's a loss that you can claim.
Which could help offset your own personal capital gains that you might have. So if you've got some highly appreciated assets, now it's a good time to sell. You can, if you don't have enough of that, you can offset your income tax with that, but it's limited to, I believe it's $3,000 a year. So let's just say, your scenario that you give us, let's just say you've got $15,000 worth of loss and you don't have any capital gains to offset. Well, you can take $3,000 a year for 5 years to offset your income tax burden. So great example of you really need to take advantage of step-up basis, but you have to do it quickly after whoever it was you inherited from passes away.
So
I get cinnamon now when I put a drop of water in there, just letting everybody know.
I haven't done that. I guess I probably need to.
I like it better before I put the drop of water in there, but it's still pretty outstanding. I think I'm going to put one more in there, just see what happens.
It definitely doesn't need it.
No, absolutely
doesn't
not.
need it at all. So good.
Yes, that is. This
So
is
good.
You know, I suddenly feel like, okay, this is fantastic. I'm loving this, but I haven't actually had any Eagle Rare in months. So, and I have a couple bottles at home. I suddenly feel the need to do a side-by-side comparison and say, okay, is it, you know, the regular Eagle Rare, I think retail on that now is 43 if you can find it.
Something like that, yeah.
And of course, this one's 50, slight difference. Is it worth the difference? Or if, you know, at the secondary market, if Eagle Rare is worth, say, 70 or 80, whatever it is now, and this is 150, is it worth the difference? I'm going to say probably not that much, but side-by-side is going to happen sometime this weekend. I'm positive of that.
Well, there you go.
All right, so let's keep going on. I had a slightly different situation, but it's what we were just talking about with the step-up basis. And it revolves around estate planning, which we've talked about. So I spoke to a client several weeks ago. They brought mom in. Now, mom is elderly. Dad passed away earlier this year, and they're trying to take care of mom. Okay, not a problem. We'll help you out. Turns out mom owns some extremely valuable farm property in Indiana. And when I say extremely valuable, $4 million was a number that was put out there. It's like, wow, okay, this is serious farm property, right?
Good for mom.
Yeah, good for mom.
Yeah.
Okay, well, as it turns out, this land, and by the way, there were several different plats of it. This land was deeded to the 3 kids 7 or 8 years ago. To which, I mean, my jaw's dropping. So you can see where this is going. So what they were doing.
You've not told me this story.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
What they were doing was they were saying, okay, we are trying to protect ourselves and our property from Medicaid spend down. So if we end up on Medicaid, right, we don't have to sell this land off to the state in order to receive Medicaid because you got to be poor, right?
Yep.
So what they did was they deeded all this property to their 3 kids equally. All right.
Prior to their death.
Prior to their death. Okay, now this is pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID.
So then they had an attorney review it, an estate attorney, and they asked the estate attorney, are we protected? And the answer was yes, because they were after 5 years, right? Well, the 5 years has passed.
But the question they asked was, are they protected from Medicaid planning?
Right.
Which technically the answer was yes.
Yes, technically the answer was yes.
Technically the answer was yes, but there was a far better way to
right.
arrive at that solution than the one that they went
So that
down.
goes into the estate planning. Go back and watch
Yes.
or listen to the podcast we did, I don't know, a month or so ago on estate planning, and that's how you should do that. Okay, so now fast forward to this year. Dad passed away earlier this year. And they said, well, now mom owns all of that. We need to know what to do with it. I said, no, mom doesn't own anything. And they said, what do you mean? It's hers. I said, no, it's not. Mom and dad deeded this land to you. And I had 2 of the 3 adult children in the room. I said, they deeded this land to you. It's yours. Yeah. Okay, but we still think of it as mom's. I said, you can think about it as the cat's. It doesn't matter. Legally, it belongs to you all. Okay, now there's nothing wrong with that. But here's the problem. Mom is elderly.
Well, there's a number of problems, but yeah.
Yes, mom is elderly. And when elderly, and I hate to use the word, let's just say she's feeble, right? I would not guess that she's going to be around for another 10, 15 years, okay? And she just lost her husband. And you and I both know that it is fairly common when you get into very elderly people, especially when they had great marriages, and by all accounts, this was one of those. When one of them dies, it's not too long before the other one. We've seen it. I know of a client where literally mom passed and dad died 8 days later, and they swear up and down dad died of a broken heart. Oh, how romantic, right? But tax problem.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's what's going to happen if mom passes away now. The value of this land, which they bought in the 50s. So think about the appreciation. We're talking about millions in appreciation here, right? They probably didn't pay very much for it at all. All right. So now The basis on this is whatever they paid for it in the 50s or early 60s, whatever it was. So now they turn around and sell it. And they made it very clear they have no intention of keeping this. All three of the kids have said, when mom and dad are gone, we're going to sell.
Well, that's actually good, because normally when you have, in situations like this, I have seen where you deeded land or not all three kids are on the same page as far as what to do with the land. You have one that wants
we got a good problem here.
Yeah, because I have seen issues. So at least they're avoiding that issue.
Yeah.
That's good.
That actually brings up a different problem with inheritance. When you inherit money, we can divvy it up. Or stocks or bonds or whatever. Land doesn't work quite like that.
And this is why we'll get there.
Anyway, so I said, here's what's going to happen. Mom passes away, and then you sell the land, because you've all said you're going to sell this when mom dies.
Yep.
You're going to sell this for, let's just say hypothetically, $4 million, right? Let's just say mom and dad paid $100,000 for it, which is probably not too far off.
Yeah.
You are going to pay capital gains on $3,900,000. Oh, man. You are going to pay this at the highest capital gain bracket, so that's 20% plus the additional tax that's like 3.5 or whatever it is. You are going to pay the better part of $1 million in taxes. I said, here's what we need to do.
All to avoid Medicaid.
Oh, to avoid Medicaid, which, by the way, wouldn't have cost you that much.
Sorry, all to qualify for Medicaid,
right.
Yes.
But you'd have better been off paying cash, right?
Yeah.
So I said, here's what we need to do. And quite frankly, I'm not trying to hit the panic button or anything, but I've met mom. I am not optimistic that mom is going to be around next year. I said, you need to deed all of this back over to mom, and everybody needs to do it, because anybody who doesn't is going to be impacted.
And hope she lives for.
Okay. So now, by the way, they then said, well, then we have to redo the trust and everything. Actually, in Indiana, you can put a beneficiary on real estate. You can't do that here in Kentucky.
Yeah.
So you can deed it back to mom. Mom then puts you down as the beneficiaries, right? Great. Yeah, I see what you're thinking. I was thinking the same thing. That's a great thing that you can do that. And now when mom passes away, that whole step up basis comes in. So let's just say, for argument's sake, that you do that. Mom passes away in a year, 5 years, whatever. The basis steps up from 100,000 or whatever it was to 4 million, because that's what it's worth at the time. You turn around and sell it almost immediately. You're going to pay only the capital gains on the difference between what it was worth on date of death and what you sold it for, which is going to be a pretty small number, most likely. Now, I don't know about you, but I do not want to give the IRS one plug nickel that I don't have to. And we've talked about this. There's precedent for that.
I don't want to give the IRS anything.
I don't want to give them anything, right? Because I know they're going to spend it on stuff that I don't like. Right? We all agree with that.
That's another podcast episode.
It's a different podcast, right? I know that's going to happen. But more so than that, if legally I don't have to give it to the IRS, why would I want to? No. We're talking about hundreds, possibly 7 figures worth of money that you have to give away. But what could you do with $1 million that you don't need, but now you have? Man, the list is endless, right? How charitable could you be? How much of an impact could you make on your children or your grandchildren?
It's generational.
Oh my gosh, it's generational wealth. This is a life-altering amount of money that you're not going to have to give to the government.
Are the clients in Louisville, or are they in Southern Indiana?
They are in Southern Indiana.
Southern Indiana, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
I mean, is that not one of those wow moments? And they said, are you sure that's correct? Oh, yes, I'm positive. Just for argument's sake, I'll verify. I had their CPA call them. And the CPA said, no, Chris is absolutely right. You've got to deed this over. They said, well, are there tax implications to us, what is effectively giving it to mom? No, there's not. As long as your CPA knows what he or she is doing. It's called the lifetime exemption. Most people are scared of gift tax. So when you give away more than $15,000 a year, there's a gift tax involved. That's not true if you write it off from your lifetime exemption.
It just brings your exemption down.
Yeah. So if you don't know, you are allowed, and it's actually with the new bill that's just passed on July 4th, they upped it again, I believe. For married filing joint couples, your lifetime exemption that you can give away is $30 million. I think it went up to 31.5 or something like that. Anyway, $30 million. Well, most of us don't have $30 million to give away. So what happens is if they give away $1 million, well, now, and you go ahead and take it out of that. Now, when you die, you're allowed to give away $29 million without there being an inheritance tax stuff. Very, very easily done. Any decent CPA knows exactly how to do that.
Yes,
right.
sure.
So there is no tax implication to this if they do it the right way. The way they're doing it now, the tax is massive.
We talk about this a lot, having a team of professionals, because I keep
good transition.
I keep going back to what you said, and this has just been in that estate planning attorney that they were working with. Mm-hmm. He answered the question, are the parents protected in order to qualify for Medicaid?
And answered truthfully.
And the answer was yes. He answered the question truthfully. That problem was solved. But this is where it's important to understand that there are multiple perspectives and definitely probably better solutions to a problem. There's more than one solution to a problem. So I can address I can address one of your problems, and maybe I can give you a solution, I can give you an answer, but is it the best, most efficient answer? That is a perfect textbook example of why having a team of professionals around you to bounce ideas off of each other. Because anyone, I don't know how best to say that, but anyone that just minimally knows Medicaid qualifications knows that they should have put the money into a trust.
Yep, absolutely they should have.
Put the money into an irrevocable trust. The children never should have been the owners of that of that land. Right. They should have put the money in, put the land in trust, and it would have been a far better way to qualify for increased step up in basis later on down the line.
That's right.
But
well, to your point, working with a team of professionals, and I'm not trying to toot our own horns when I say this. The financial planner, the wealth manager, now keep in mind there's a difference between that and just Joe investment advisor, right? It's somebody who, it's different. So you got to make sure you're dealing with somebody who is truly a planner. Well, they're kind of the quarterback, but a quarterback needs a team. Right. And I'm reminded several years back, I had a client that I said, you need to go redo your estate plan. We kind of walked through what I believed they needed in order to accomplish that. Said, okay, great. So I referred them to a couple of different attorneys and they picked one of them. And they went through this whole process. Then the attorney called me back because we work as a team and said, okay, we've got some ideas. Can we get together and have a little brainstorming session? Absolutely. So we called the CPA, and the three of us had a meeting on how this estate plan is going to work out, how all this stuff. Well, most everything we all agreed on, but it was interesting. In the estate planning session with the attorney, it came up that they wanted to contribute $200,000 to charity upon their death. So they want to be somewhat charitable while they're living, but they wanted to leave $200,000 behind it, whatever the number, wherever they came up with that number from. So the attorney said, well, we need to partition, that $200,000. And the CPA and I looked at each other and went, no, absolutely not. That's not what we're going to do. So the attorney, of course, is like, what do you mean? And we both went, donor advised fund immediately. So
easy, yeah.
And what we did is we took $100,000. We took it out of their accounts now. We put it into the donor advised fund. Now it can grow, and upon their death then goes to the charities that they had listed, right? So they don't have to give as much in order to give as much because they just simply use the right tools. The whole point of working with the team is the estate attorney who's been doing this for decades was simply unaware of that tool. Whereas the CPA and I immediately, that's a no-brainer from our point of view. Mm-hmm. So that's the reason why you work with a team is because they're not telling you different things and you got to figure out which parts to follow. They're actually working on creating the best situation for you. Right?
And the reality too is, and I have seen this in meetings that I've had with estate planning attorneys and CPAs. Mm-hmm. And these are fantastic CPAs and attorneys. I'm not saying anything negative about them, but they live in their lane. We live in our lane, right? And sometimes they get very myopic in their view of this is how this is how to solve the problem, and this is what I know, right? And anything that's kind of outside of their lane becomes a little bit more troublesome, where they just don't see the blind spots. That's why if you have a CPA, an attorney, estate planning attorney, and a planner like us, a wealth manager, we can kind of see each other's blind spots and talk through some of these pain points. And I've been a part of some of these meetings, and they're kind of fun.
Yeah, they are. I enjoy them.
I enjoy if you enjoy kind of the problem solving. If you're a problem solver, and that I enjoy that.
That's
myself.
our world is problem solving.
Yeah, but so they are kind of enjoyable for us anyway. But it's interesting. I remember the very first time when I first got into this business, I was in a meeting with an estate planning attorney, and I was like, should I tell him he's wrong? But this is a guy that was very clearly my senior.
Yeah.
And he'd been around for decades, and I was like, I kind of hate to say this, but but it provides a differing perspective and a different solution, and guess whose solution we went with, right? It was mine, right? We followed my ideas, and he was very gracious, and he was absolutely understanding, but he completely understood that, okay, there's a better way to skin a cat, so to speak, in this case.
So the analogy, we talk about how the wealth manager, the financial planner, needs to be the quarterback. I heard an analogy years ago that just reminds me of how those teams of professionals should be working together, that just really struck me. They took the quarterback analogy and they extended it. And if you're not a football fan, I apologize, because I'm getting ready to go down the rails. It's July. I'm starting to think college football starts the end of next month. I'm jonesing, right? So anyway, if you think about all the different people that are on a football field, right? On your offense, you got 11 people. Every one of them has a uniquely different job. Now, some of them are similar, but they all have a uniquely different job. And that circle of professionals that you should be working with kind of works the same way. So, that offensive line, that's your insurance agent. That's the one, their job is to protect you. You said they work in their own bubble. The offensive line doesn't care about what the tight end is doing when he goes out for a pass, or what the wide receivers are doing. And quite frankly, their job is to protect the quarterback, right? They don't really care about anything else. The running back, his job is not to go out and get 30 and 40 yards at a time. His job is to go out and get in 4. Every time he touches the ball, he needs to get 4 yards.
Move the flag.
Right? Yep. Move the chains, right?
Move the chains,
the wide receiver is supposed to go get 10 and 15 and 20 yards at a time, but he's only supposed to do it a handful of times per game. The tight end is that hybrid position. Everybody has a different role. And if you know anything about the way a football play is actually called in the huddle, and you hear some of these crazy things, you're only listening for one part of that. Right? When you hear that big play called, half that stuff, you don't even know what it means because it refers to somebody else. You're focused on your part. But the point is that the quarterback does know what all those different things are, right? And therefore, they can actually get the ball to where it needs to be in order to advance it, in order to score. That's the game. So that analogy to me works very well in working with teams. Each person needs to know what their job is. But ultimately, there's one person or one team of people who have to run the way that works. And that's the way you should be doing it. If those people are not talking to each other, man, the tight end is going out for a pass when he's supposed to be blocking on this play. Yeah. Because they don't know that they're supposed to be doing something different. That's why they need to work together as a team.
So it's probably a pretty good place to wrap up. So at the end of the day, communication is highly important. Communication should be the first thing that we're talking about in all of this. You should be communicating with your parents. Parents, you should be communicating with your kids.
Please stop trying to be secretive about this stuff.
Things should be written down. Things should be planned for. I understand the greatest generation ideal of you don't talk money and politics. Clearly, you've never been to one of my family events. We talk. We're happy to talk about all that stuff.
We don't talk about anything but politics, right?
We're happy to talk about all that stuff. But yes, communication is highly important. You need to understand kind of where all the bodies are buried, so to speak, because preparation is key.
Yeah.
The more prepared, the more informed you are ahead of time, the better the decisions you make when it's actually go time, for lack of a better term, right? We're all going to die. It's eventual death and taxes, right?
Right.
We're all going to die. We all need to prepare for it. But the most successful transitions that I've been a part of, that I've been a privilege to be a part of, have been the ones that we've been prepared for.
Yep. Amen.
The ones where there's any issues as far as, unforeseen things or accounts we didn't know about or siblings fighting and things like that were the ones where communication was not done ahead of the event. So if there's anything to take away from this conversation, preparation and communication is key to a successful inheritance.
Yep. Absolutely. This concept of I don't want my kids to know, you're creating more problems than you're solving. You need to get past that, work through it.
Well,
right?
It's also, and this is, I don't know.
I am always amazed at the number of kids that say, Mom, I don't want your money. Please go spend it. We're okay. We don't need it. Go enjoy yourself instead of worrying about taking care of us.
But at least the kids know about it.
Exactly.
And it's also, and I don't really know a better way to say this, it's kind of a uniquely lower and middle class ideal where you don't talk about money. Because trust me, rich people, they have attorneys.
Yep.
It's all communicated.
They know.
It's all out in the open, and they know how everything is passed from one generation to the next. So it's important, and even if you don't, and it's also a very middle class position where maybe you don't feel rich, maybe you don't feel because you grew up a certain way and you've saved all your life and you've been much more of a saver. And so you don't feel like you're rich, you don't feel like you have a lot of money, but in reality, you're in that top 5%. Right, you're a 5%er, and we need to plan for and prepare for the eventuality that one day you will pass away.
Yep. Amen.
So with that,
I got one more thing I want to add.
Oh, go ahead.
Just on the bourbon, Eagle Rare 12-year. There's a limited amount out of it that's going to be out there, at least for a while. So I'm going to say this stuff is horrible. It's undrinkable. Don't go buy it. So you'll leave more on the shelf for me. I'm going to be a little greedy for that.
That's totally fine.
That's awesome.
I'll be greedy with you.
Is this not fantastic?
I love it.
Wow.
Yes. So
awesome. Well done, Buffalo Trace.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you next time.